I've, 29 years old, been cheating on my wife, 31 years old, for a little over a year now with another woman, 20 years old, whom I think I love. My wife and I met in college and dated for about 2 years before I proposed. Things were smooth for almost a year before my wife seemed to change. She was constantly rude, nagging at me for anything, making belittling comments. I began to spend more time at work to avoid her constant negativity. She was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and bipolar disorder. Still, I was sure we'd work through it, so I stayed with her. I believed I still loved her. 2 years after her diagnosis, my dad died in a car crash. While I was distraught, I couldn't help but notice that my wife seemed almost glad. She'd never mentioned an issue with my parents, but any time I seemed sad about it, she'd say something like, "It's for the best," or, "You should get over it soon." My brother took his loss harder than I did and turned to alcohol. As a favor, I took him in when his landlord turned him out. I work a lot, but my wife owns her own business and often works from home. I, wrongly, assumed that I could leave the two of them alone together, but while I was away, they would have sex. I found this out from a neighbor who walked in on them when asking for a parcel. I also later found out he had been stealing from us as well. As any sane person would, I kicked him out of my home. I tried to file for a divorce, but my wife went through an awful depressive episode lasting almost a month. I dropped the ideas about a divorce. For a while, things seemed to go back to how they were when I was 20. Things were going great at work and I was climbing the ranks. We'd just moved into a new house closer to my work. My wife had begun branching out and now owned 2 or 3 shops in the city. She was on a new medication that made her a much more pleasant person. Our sex life was great, and then we found out she was having a baby. I was ecstatic. I love kids. My wife and I had always wanted a kid, but every time we tried, it hadn't worked. Soon enough, our son was born. Over the course of his first couple of months, I began to have doubts that he was really my son. I put this off as first kid worries or whatever and continued with my life. Until one evening, my wife sat me down and told me the kid was my brother's. Her reasons were that she knew I'd always wanted a kid and that our DNA was too close for it to make a difference. Never mind the fact that meant she was sleeping with my brother again. Again, I distanced myself. I tried to file for a divorce again, but my wife returned to her depressive state, so once again, I dropped it. One night after an argument, I left the house with no intention of going anywhere and ended up in a bar. I got talking to a girl and we had a one-night stand. I couldn't help but think of my wife the whole time, and yet a week later, I slept with her again. She told me things about herself. She was living with her cousin. She worked 2 jobs to put herself through uni. She felt like she was alone in the world. Our one-night stand became a whole relationship, and I realized that I was cheating on my wife. It became a lot easier when I made her my secretary. I don't want to explain many details about our relationship. She was by no means at fault. I didn't tell her I had a wife until a month or so before I gave her the job. I didn't tell her about my son until our first argument. I was spending a lot more time at work and my wife began getting suspicious. She stopped taking her meds, telling me they clouded her thoughts and refused to speak with her psychiatrist. Still, she doesn't know about the other woman. Really, I know I am at fault for a lot of this, and a tragic backstory or whatever doesn't let me off. But I really do think I'm in love with the woman I'm cheating with and I don't know what to do. My wife, who suffers from multiple mental illnesses, has put me through numerous hardships and now I'm cheating on her. Am I the asshole?